Hello, welcome to the Health In Show, an affiliate program of Homeopathy World Community. You've come to the right place to tune in and participate with your comments and questions. Love is the greatest healer of all, but sometimes, in order to change our emotions, we must take action in other spheres of our lives. We speak with experts in alternative and complementary health fields and hope you will benefit in some small or great way. Remember, you are wherever your thoughts are. Make sure your thoughts are where you want to be.
Welcome, everyone. We're beginning the Health In Show, an affiliate program of Homeopathy World Community, remotely today, December 2, 2013, following up on a wonderful Thanksgiving, hopefully for everyone. Lots of family, connection, joy, laughter, and filling our tummies with good food and recuperating from that, going out for walks and big smiles. And I'm waving across the internet to Donna Powers, who is going to be our special guest. Also, I believe that Dr. Deepak Sharma of the Orbits Clinic in New Delhi is with us via the audio. And so we're welcoming everyone wherever you are in the world. Come in from Twitter, come in from Facebook, or Google Plus now. So we're going to be talking and having a kind of serious discussion about our feelings, our own empowerment, how we assert ourselves in certain situations that might be a little bit sticky. So Donna, I don't know exactly where I met her, whether it was on the network or one of the other social networks. She is a homeopath in practice for 12 years and for many years attended so many seminars. And she was just telling me how she has gained a new role, an important role as a grandparent, and reflecting back on how times have changed between taking care of your children in the earlier decades, or even our parents and grandparents looked at health and wellness and disease and sickness and how we mentally, emotionally look at this. And so she says she's a mom of the 80s and a 21st century grandmother, talking about caring for children today and empowering caretakers. So I'm going to let her begin after I say, this is her quote on her email: "Someday, after we have mastered the winds, the waves, the tides, and gravity, we shall harness for God the energies of love. Then, for the second time in the history of the world, we will have discovered fire." That is Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. And so that must be an important quote for you to message it out to everyone you ever speak with.
It is, Debbie, and it was really delightful to hear you read it. Brought tears to my eyes because we are at that stage in history. We are probably recreating love in a new way, but preceding that is a terrible chaos. And Teilhard de Chardin wrote that several years ago, and I learned of him through Barbara Marx Hubbard. And we are evolving. So yes, love is what is there. And if we can remember that, my little gratitude message this morning was about gratitude as the source as well.
So we are in a space of gratitude, universal energy right now with Thanksgiving. And every little thing is so touches our hearts, especially our children, and watching them grow and develop, mature as healthy individuals. And that is what you are on this planet to do, is it not?
It is. And it took me a little while to realize my purpose, but boy, when you find it, the struggle ends and you have a direction and you have a purpose, and this is mine. And it's to take what I have learned, a lifetime of learning, I'd say all incorporated. There isn't any piece that gets left out. But in particular, from having children, I was, and as my biography says, an 80s mom. So at that time, you didn't think about needing a conversation with your physician. You took your baby for your well checkups, and you were told immunization is immunity for life, or vaccination is immunity for life. And there wasn't any thought. There was no questioning. It was an authority. Your doctor was the one who knew best, even though when my kids got sick, it was my mother who I called. And I'm from the generation in the 50s, having had a mother who nursed all of us through all the infectious illnesses. We had everything. We had measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox. We had hepatitis. It was called yellow jaundice at that time. And the regular sore throats, ear infections. And there were 5 children. And she went right down the line. And the only time she ever got sick was with mumps, because she had never had them as a child. She grew up on a farm.
Oh, your mom?
My mom ended up with mumps, so she was very sick, but that was after seeing all of us through the illnesses. So it was her I turned to, but not for the infectious illnesses, because my children were supposedly taken care of. But then there were a whole series of events with my own children that added another layer. So I count myself historically with the women who were in the forefront, and one man in particular, Dr. Harris Coulter, Barbara Lowe Fisher, Dr. Vera Scheibner, and Hilary Butler. These are people are foundational. They were speaking out far ahead of anybody else. And we didn't have the internet. As a parent, I did not have the internet. So how I happened on Dr. Vera Scheibner was through a homeopathic clinic. And that was the only place I could get help for my son, was a homeopathic clinic in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And that's where my story began. And then I thought, this is the medicine that in my head, I knew there was a medicine. I didn't know the name of it. And then I realized this is it. Homeopathy is, as a parent, intuitively, I understood. I didn't know how, but I did.
You know what? Everyone probably is thinking in their mind, they're listening closely and carefully, because that is one of the key points to communication. They're listening to your telling of your story, but they're also thinking in their head and going back to their own life story historically, how they grew up and how they were cared for. We have a person on hold right now who is on the phone, and we welcome callers at 919-518-9773 or via Skype at Computers 2K Voice. And we would like to hear from the caller now. Welcome.
Hi there.
Hi, are you in just to listen, or do you have a comment, story, or question?
This is Kim Spencer. I'm with the Thinking Moms Revolution.
Yay! I wanted to say thank you to all those people involved with the Thinking Moms Revolution, because you are revolutionizing the way moms think, and dads.
Well, we're glad to share our cautionary tales, because most of us were not informed, did not inform ourselves before the absolute worst happened to each of us, which is children who are very, very ill. So it took that for us to learn what we needed to do, which was find every bit of information we could about what's going on in our medical world in this day and age. And what we have found is we have very little help and very little support unless you do your own homework. So that's where we're coming from. We have people that can learn from us that, you really do need to find out what's going on before you have children. And after you have children and notice things are going on, you need to wake up really quick and educate yourself.
Right. So education is also a very key issue. And one of the things that I feel is true, when you are young, innocent, naive, you just see the world as sunshine and things are going to be great for you. You're going to have the most beautiful child, and you're going to do a better parenting job than your own parents. And you don't really consider things like, you worry that your child will be healthy, but you don't consider that your physician might not have all the information that is going to be valid or up to date or going to work out for the best for your child. And how do you reach out to parents to say, we're talking here and we want to encourage you to join this conversation?
Absolutely. And I have a unique perspective myself in that after my son was diagnosed in 1993, he's now 13, we had a local pediatrician who was very integrative, had a background in homeopathy, was offering to learn and to educate himself on what to do about autism once it's happened, and also to educate himself on what the causes could be. And he hired me as an advocate for his patients that would come in and want more help with autism and their children, ADHD, anything on the spectrum, food allergies, all this kind of behavioral issues. And I learned a lot there about what the chasm is here between mainstream and alternative medicine. At the time, I wasn't even knowledgeable myself about what else was out there other than mainstream, and I was grasping at any straw I could get for mainstream to help me with my son. So, even from his perspective, a man who is in his 60s, who has children in college, who has a successful mainstream pediatric practice, but also has a background and knowledge on, alternative treatments and what's going on with vaccines and everything, kind of had his hands tied. I mean, what I learned was, people could come in and they could get help, but he was very limited in time. And he was also very limited in what he could do to help with vaccines. You needed the parents, any parent who came in and had questions about vaccines, who wanted an alternative schedule, who wanted to do things differently, really needed to be educated. He couldn't just hand out a medical exemption to anybody who heard that, that thing with Dr. Wakefield was true. He needed more than that. He needed the parent to understand why they were turned down vaccines. And I'll tell you one reason why. And I'm not saying I agree with the way he chose to run his practice. And since then, I wish that he had just completely shunned mainstream, but because he didn't, this is what I learned, that insurance companies come in and audit the pediatricians, and say if it's Blue Cross Blue Shield, they can come in and pull.
We're having, excuse me, is this Kim? We're having a request for you to speak a little slower. Folks from other countries are not catching all of your words.
I'm so sorry. I'm very Southern and a fast-speaking girl. But what I saw in the practice was that insurance companies could come in, say Blue Cross Blue Shield came in to audit him, pulled 20 random files of 20 different children whose parents carried that insurance. And then if a certain percentage of those children were not fully vaccinated according to the CDC schedule, then Blue Cross Blue Shield or Medicaid, through the state or whatever other insurance provider could decide to pull that insurance from his office. So where he might agree that a certain child may not need to be fully vaccinated or vaccinated at all, he also didn't want to decimate half of his practice by making Blue Cross Blue Shield mad and no longer be able to carry that insurance. So this is when I learned how pediatricians' hands are tied. Although this particular pediatrician was very understanding and open-minded about the vaccination issue, most are only there to do the bidding of the CDC and the insurance companies so that they can make their money and ask very little more questions than that. They have very little tolerance and very little time to talk to parents about this issue. and then to also bend to their will, which would be a medical exemption or a delayed schedule or whatever it is that the parent wants to do. So it's a very convoluted situation here when we're dealing with mainstream medicine.
This is the reality. Donna, as I hear her speak about being an advocate, I'm kind of getting a metaphor like a doula helps a woman to give birth, like a midwife, and is her advocate. And in the next stage of the development from birth in the child's life, we also need parents to have health advocates. And I think this is going to be an up and coming, really great career role. That's what you do, right? And so can you tell us more about how you guide parents and about your course?
It's a good point, Debbie. Thank you for the metaphor, because even just this morning I was thinking medicine is evolving toward coaching. Yes. You have parents who are very well informed, well educated, have access to resources for somebody like Barbara Lowe Fisher, Hilary Butler, women who have been collecting research for 30 years, and I include myself in part of that. So what parents, I think, are looking for, and I like to think in Dr. Vera Scheibner, she brings in the medical journal research aspect of it. So we have a tremendous resource of women and men now that you can draw on, and we can provide the information that's needed now so that if your child is vaccine free, whether by choice or by necessity, that they cannot absolutely have one more vaccine, then we can now provide the information that I received from my mother. So we're talking about grandmother wisdom now, and how you recognize infectious childhood illnesses, how you make it actually easier on the medical system. We had a measles outbreak here in southern Alberta, and so I made sure that I went to all of the medical websites, provincially, locally, and gave parents the information that they needed. Because one of the things that happened when you phoned in, and it happened, my granddaughter had a viral illness, we phoned into the public health link, and they said, if you suspect measles, do not bring her into a walk-in clinic, a doctor's office, or a medical emergency department. And they can't cope with the infectious illnesses. So it's really important for me that parents are able to identify what an infectious illness is, what it looks like, how it starts, how it progresses, and how you can use homeopathy to support that. And I just want to speak a little bit to Kim's mention about understanding that the pediatrician's hands are tied. And I think in terms of approaching our physicians and how we talk and converse with them, this is how we can approach it in love and compassion and understanding. They are parents. They are earning incomes. They are supporting families. So they may understand that the information we have is valid, and how can we work then as a team cooperatively with them, because sometimes we do need emergency medical help. And I tell everybody who comes through my course or in my practice, if it's blood, brains, bones, breathing, you're off to emergency. This is not alternative medicine. This is not home medicine. This is not complementary. It can be complementary medicine in that you can give your remedies, but emergency medicine is superior. That's where we need to be. So if we can work cooperatively with that and be able to stand in our information and in our education, when we are in an adrenaline-loaded, fearful situation, we can reassure the medical staff, yes, my child is vaccine-free for either personal reasons or medical reasons. I know what they are. Right now is not the time for a discussion about this. My child is having a breathing problem. I need your help. You are highly skilled and qualified for that. And so we can be grateful for what they provide, and we can have an understanding and be in gratitude for what complementary medicine also has to offer, and for what parents bring in terms of knowing their child best.
Would you, Donna, like to begin the part of our show which is a little bit more interactive, where we ask the listeners who are out there, all the viewing audience, to ask themselves some of their own questions and maybe get a little piece of paper, or pencil, or type on your notes, your notepad on your computer, just the immediacy of the question. What comes to mind for these particular questions? This is kind of like, is this something that you typically do with parents?
It is, and it really is, because when you're in a crisis situation, the adrenaline's flowing, the fear's there, you're loading your child up into the car. I can get a panic call, what do I do? So we get the remedy that's needed on the way. I teach that as part of the course. You can give a remedy on the way. And the other thing I reassure them with is, this is not failure. You have not failed as a parent because your child is this sick. Your child simply is this sick, and you are going to the right place at the right time. And then we will deal with what we need to deal with after that. But I would really like to promote that there is personal safety and health in what you're choosing as a parent, whether you vaccinate or don't vaccinate, and if you have to go to an emergency department, that you'll be able to have the knowledge and comfort level within yourself to know when you need to do what you need to do without any sense of failure. And then you can have, my hope is that you could have any kind of conversation then with your medical doctor. But what we're left with is our fears. What are our biggest fears in facing a medical doctor, an emergency situation? And this is where we can really grow ourselves personally and then take that step to move from fear into a situation of love and compassion for ourselves, for our children, for the attending physician. So yes, let's bring on the questions.
Okay, so what the first question has to do with what you just introduced. You gave one of the answers. The answer is fear of failure. And there are probably many other fears that a parent has when they, not only just in an emergency situation, but in a regular well visit with a physician. Fears that a parent has about approaching the physician and being able to speak their true feelings, their concerns and minds. What are the fears that a person might have? And so take a moment, if you're listening, write down, what are my fears when I approach the doctor's office? Or, I don't know, you wouldn't bump into them in the grocery store.
You might.
But, when you have, maybe I think even to heighten it is to say, you're concerned about a particular issue that you want to speak about. That is bringing a little bit more tension into the conversation, right?
It is. And it's your comment, Debbie, I just have to respond to it. You wouldn't see your pediatrician in the grocery store. It used to be your physician knew the whole community. You used to have that whole central community, and there's been a distance created between our regular everyday life and our medical system. It's just a thought.
Yeah. So how do we close the gap on the distance? I know you're very, very attuned to some of your, I don't know whether you know them in person, but I call them mentors, people who write books about issues that really move you forward. So one of the things that you have written is, I believe we can change the world if we start listening to one another again. Simple, honest, human conversation. Not mediation, negotiation, problem solving, debate, or public meetings. Simple, truthful conversation where we each have a chance to speak. We each feel heard and we each listen well. What would it feel like to be listening to each other again about what disturbs and troubles us, about what gives us energy and hope, about our yearnings, our fears, our prayers, our children. And it ends on the note that is your mission, our children.
It is, very much, very much.
And does that come from Margaret Wheatley?
That comes from Margaret Wheatley. And her book is called Turning to One Another, Simple Conversations to Restore Hope to the Future. And it is about getting to know people. So our American friends have just finished Thanksgiving. And this is where you sit at a table. And sometimes you have the hard conversations. And sometimes it's all about the fun. And it's about listening, at least in my family. You know, it's almost a topic of the Sunday dinner in Winnipeg especially. So they talk about things like death, or preparing for old age, or what do you think about this? And when you start having those kinds of conversations, when you can feel safe, and where fear of shame and being shamed is removed from the equation, I think that this is when you can really hear each other. And I think that that's the biggest fear probably that parents face when they go to an emergency situation or even to a well baby visit, that they will somehow be shamed or bullied into a situation, and to feel like they are forced to do something they don't want to do.
Right. And, you know, Todd Rowe, the president, I guess, of the American Medical Homeopathic College, also says that the root of so much is that embarrassment and shame in our lives that prevents us from taking a step out and become self-empowered and doing things that are inappropriate, or doing things that will improve a relationship because of this fear of embarrassment or shame. We're already feeling that way. We have somebody on the chat. Cece says that what's so frustrating is that you cannot even object to vaccines because of scientific evidence. You can't use your brain. You have to use a religious exemption. So you can't even discuss for fear of religious exemptions being questioned. And it's a very complicated issue. Every Thursday on Blog Talk Radio with Alan Phillips, we discuss the legal matters revolving around vaccines. And it is getting to be a very closed, you know, the legal issues are getting harder to jump through these hoops. And it's making it even more difficult to get an exemption without having a legal advisor. So what do you respond to this vaccine issue?
Well, with the legalities here in Canada, it's not illegal. You do not need, I think there's a couple of provinces where you might need an exemption, but typically here in Canada, you have the freedom to choose. And that was set up quite some time ago, and each province set up individually. So you have the recommendation, of course, from the Public Health Agency of Canada with the published vaccine schedule, but there's not a legal issue here. And if you make a choice for that, you do have to accept liability, and you do have to agree to quarantine your child. So for our American friends, this is a huge issue now. This is a huge issue, and probably one of the best resources besides Alan Phillips on your Blog Talk Radio on Thursdays is Barbara Lowe Fisher at the National Vaccine Information Center, because she has always promoted freedom to choose and vaccine safety. She's not anti-vaccine, you know, and that's so easy. This is what, you know, the whole conversation idea is about, rather than polarizing and becoming an attack and defend, and how much information do I have? And if I just throw it at you hard enough and fast enough, that's the bullying part. And you can even get that in the cyber world. I quite naively and innocently said yes to somebody who wanted to have a conversation. And I thought, this is great. We can make this a little bit public. And it wasn't a conversation he wanted. He wanted to throw, he was shouting. And I realized, okay, this is how you shout in the cyber world. So I had to shut down the conversation. And then I did find out there was a connection with somebody who knew him. And then that was a reality. But I had to pay attention, Debbie, to what was
Yes.
created in me, the fear, the bullying, the shame, and know that there's a difference between having a conversation and being yelled at.
Yes. And in the situation of being yelled at, because you had the control at the time, you were able to shut down the conversation. But what happens if you're not the person managing the website? Do you just leave and let them continue with their shouting and bullying? I mean, bullying is the major issue we're talking about constantly. What do you recommend? This is a major question that I have of how to respond. And homeopaths know that they deal with this every single day, that there are people who are, their whole intent and purpose of their mission is to try and say negative things and demean another human being, their personhood, even though it has nothing to do with the particular issue at hand. And constantly give these kinds of references. So what do you, mocking, I mean, they do this on intentionally. What do you do as a response?
And this is a dynamic that happens not only in the cyber world, and I think this comes from a place of fear. Anything that's different, any person that's different, any piece of information that's different than accepted common knowledge. But accepted common knowledge changes and evolves. And so for me, I did have to make a decision with this particular incident to close him off from that Facebook page. And I think we have to be able to remove ourselves, understand our feelings, and know when we are in a situation of being bullied. We wouldn't tolerate it in a marriage. We wouldn't tolerate it for our children at school. And so
unfortunately, that is the utopian.
It is.
Because,
and I am, I am an idealist. I am an optimist. And so for me, then it comes back to me, and how do I position myself so that I can understand with some kind of compassion and love what the fear is for this person, that they have to have this. Your meditation this morning before the show was lovely. It was so perfect because it was making
it every Monday.
It is, because it's how do I want to be in a situation. Mm-hmm. It's ultimately what that comes down to. And if I can have a conversation with love and respect, I have heard on Dr. Phil, haven't watched him for a long time, but most affairs are not about sex. They're about finally finding somebody who is listening to them.
Aha.
That it's about feeling heard and having somebody really just take time to listen. So sometimes physicians are under these terrible constraints. They have 15 minutes per appointment. I haven't been inside a doctor's office for some time because I haven't needed to be. But I saw one time there was a list of exactly, if you have more than 3 things you want to talk about, choose one. If it's a psychological issue, you have to book well in advance and you get a 30-minute appointment. And I think that as homeopaths, we have a tremendous gift to offer people because they come and we create an open space full of heart, and they can just allow themselves to hear themselves, maybe for the first time. And there's a resonance that happens there. That's HeartMath, heartmath.org. If anybody wants the science of resonance between connections and people, HeartMath. It's an unusual name, but it's a
feedback of your heart. Yes, it's a wonderful program. So this is all about listening, and I guess part of the difficulty that we might have today is the fact that many of those folks out there, I mean, this is not talking about the physicians, but on the networks where you might be getting bullied, these people are actually paid to be there, and that's their job. You will never have a resolution. You will never have a living communication, because that is why they're there, only to cause you heartache and trouble. So
But
in those,
yeah, but you see, Debbie, I can get excited about that because for me, this is the metaphor for our immune system. When our immune system is healthy and strong, we live cooperatively, even with the most serious pathogens in our system, because our immune system is continually, kind of like editing. And for me, I'm trying to move away from the metaphor of attack, defend, battle, war, killing. This is an old metaphor that is not working anymore, and we need something more vibrant and alive. So I know that this cyberspace bully is still out there, but in my own little Facebook microcosm world, so yes, I've had to quiet that voice down. It was too loud, it was too destructive. So this is kind of how I think about it a little bit.
okay, so what I'm hearing, if I may, is you've reframed the whole situation of individuals and their part in the world, and who you are as a whole human being, and what is the enemy. The enemy is no longer the enemy, is it? It's other that
Yes.
perhaps is doing their thing out there, fighting their own battles and their own wars, but you're not part of it anymore. You're really in here editing your script, your mental dialogue. And as we do that, wherever you are, make sure you are where you want to be, is the meditation for every day.
Yes.
That you're every moment you're recreating your world. So if you create a more beautiful world, more harmonious, peaceful, and integrated world, then all of those other things will just fall off the end of the earth, I guess.
Possibly. But the other thing with sick kids, Debbie, it puts you in a world that you may not want to be. So you give yourself conflicting messages. My kids should not be sick. My kids should be healthy. My kids, I feed them right. I do. And this is where we can easily move into a sense of failure. So for me, raising 2 children with ADD, ADHD, learning disabilities, and they were predisposed for that. Vaccines just simply added a layer. I believe they came into the world wired quite differently, and the vaccines didn't do this to them. But I had to learn how to be at peace with what was, because I didn't ask for that. I felt like I didn't create that, but I somehow needed to learn how to actively participate in what is. So this is why with the Thinking Moms Revolution, with the parents who are raising children on the autism spectrum, or who have been diagnosed with it, tremendous courage when I read their blogs, when they've come into a place of, because you try to fix, and you try to get the doctor to understand what you're trying to fix, and they're coming from a very different model and paradigm. And then you come to a place of peace and gratitude for what is, and you continue to move towards health. And so there's a little bit of, it's not just a positive, happy, positive thinking. We've come through that. I mean, I lived that decade as well. If you just think and give yourself positive affirmations. When you have a sick kid, you could give yourself all the positive affirmations in the world. Reality is, you're really cranky, your child is really cranky, and you are brought to the brink of all of your human frailty. I used to think I was a really nice person until I had children, and then until I had colicky children, and then I had sick children on top of that. And it was, wow, I have a lot of work to do. So when you realize that.
They push all of your buttons.
Yes, and you push all of theirs. And that actually is what motivated me. There's another group, 2 women, Adele Faber and Elaine Maislish. And honestly, they were my Dr. Spock. But the book is called How to Talk So Children Will Listen, and How to Listen So Children Will Talk. And it was in cartoons, Debbie. And I had read Self-Esteem, a Family Affair, so I went through that whole 80s, 90s thing where you're so careful about your child's self-esteem. So you're going to really do it right as a parent. Like you said, you're going to do different. You're going to do it differently. And you're not going to damage your child. But, so I would open up this little comic book almost with these and go, and then I would follow it line by line because that's how they would give it to you. And and they did, they reassured you that it's like learning a new language. The immune system.
You copied the scripts from the cartoons, and that worked?
Oh, I would hold the book. That book went with me everywhere. And I would just read it. Okay, they're not doing what I want them to do.
Right.
So then I would follow it, give them in wishes. So they had 4 or 5 little techniques that you would use. So I've often wondered, I wonder if this would work with your physicians. Because what we would get, Debbie, was moms would come to the course and then they would say, well, how can I get my husband? How can I use this with my husband? I want him to talk. So this seems to be a universal thing that we all just want to be heard, and we want somebody able to talk to us so that we can listen. And to hear maybe how the pediatrician has their arms tied. They just want to be acknowledged and, affirmed as well. But where do we find that? How do we get there? This is why I want to have this conversation, because maybe there's listeners out there right now who have had an experience of being heard.
Anybody out there had a positive experience of opening the conversation with their physician? It's almost like a lot of times a physician's office, at least I've had the experience, will have a group of parents who will get together and go through a difficult kind of a disease process. And is there a way for these parents to come back to the physician and inform them of their feelings, or say, we're opening up the discussion to you, to the doctor, to tell us what it is that you're trying to get across, what message you're trying to get across to us? I mean, how to open, and they're very limited in their time, obviously, because they have a family as well.
They are. Well, I'm curious, is there anybody who's on the line who's had an experience? I could share a little one with my own adult children, but I would rather hear from some of the others.
We have a lot of folks in the chat. Let me see.
Okay.
And there's a lot of chatting going on today about, well, Dr. Bob says MDs today have no choice. They go by the book or they'll get sued. There is no such thing as a practice of art of medicine. And you know what is very fascinating? This morning on Sanjay Gupta, he was saying that it is a sickness healthcare program, and that people go to the doctor when they want to be repaired, when there's something wrong. They don't go to the doctor just to have their overall health assessed and get positive preventative maintenance. And that is, I think, at the forefront of the change of what's going to happen to medicine. Although with the Affordable Care Act, he was saying, unfortunately, that now people will think, oh, I can just go back to drinking and smoking and doing all these things, and I'll just go to the doctor again, who's going to give me a pill. And that's the mentality that we have to change, to say the responsibility of our health is within each and every one of us.
Mm-hmm. I would totally agree with you. And I do have a little story about that.
Yeah.
One of my online friends lost his medical benefits through his company.
Okay.
And in Canada, of course, our health care is provided provincially and federally. So we have what the U.S. is now moving toward, essentially free healthcare. But historically, just not many people in Canada even know this, it was two-part. It was introduced in the province of Saskatchewan by a socialist government, and it was a two-pronged program. One was that overall health care for everybody, universal health care, but the second part was prevention. it never got implemented. So to go back to my other story, as soon as he lost his health benefits where they paid for prescriptions, he was motivated to get healthy. He lost weight, he started to exercise, and I believe he's off all his medications now. So, yeah, I hear the concerns. Yeah.
Right. So what you just said makes me realize that each person is going to have something that triggers their getting into action, motivating them to change what they have been doing as habitual for their life, that there's going to be something. And how do we reach that in each person to improve their health? I want to also say what Giza on the chat says: the best immunization, quote, the best immunization is feeling loved, feel loved you, and rejoice in life, trust in the creation. It's just a beautiful thought I wanted to throw out there. That is our heart math, is to feel loved, to love others, to feel heard, to know that you're heard and listened to, and that you're listening to others. So maybe that's the greatest fear of the question of the day. What is our greatest fear? It's not being heard. Is that it? And both on all sides, whether you're the doctor or the patient, whether you're the parent or the child or the grandparent, whatever.
And we only seem to make changes when we are faced with a crisis. Mm-hmm. And out of that chaos, then we can rebirth something new. This is Barbara Marx Hubbard's work. And it's out of, and she likens it to childbirth. You get so uncomfortable, you just want that baby to be born, and it moves you into that next stage of labor, and then life is created. And right now, there are so much that is not sustainable anymore, and that there are going to be, just think about it. If you are somebody who's gone through a real health crisis with your child with a very serious chronic illness, and you have found a way to get through, eventually we will be able to help and support those physicians who finally reach a state of their own crisis, of deciding they don't want their hands tied anymore. They still want to make a living, and they want to be able to do it in a way that's respectful for those who come to them, which might mean more time for some patients on some days. So I think before the how, it's going to get really uncomfortable. But if we can have the conversations with ourselves and then with those we trust, and then we can move out in a sense of compassion, rather than I'm right, you're wrong. Again, moving away from that metaphor of war and battle. This is a sharing of information. I've recovered my child. My child does not have asthma anymore. My child's eczema is now gone. Then I think, we can welcome physicians who are just as terrified probably by what their peers are going to say, that they're going to be laughed at. Some of my biggest heroes right now are medical doctors who have stepped forward. Dr. Suzanne Humphreys, Dr. Russell Blaylock. These are significant, physicians who have, Dr. Mendelsohn.
Right.
And
all of these physicians have stepped out of the medical model and are informing the public of the information, the science that they have observed. And if you look at physicians today, they live in a highly stressed world. So many demands. They themselves do not have an opportunity to provide for themselves the proper healthy lifestyle. They are usually overweight quite a bit and not eating the proper foods, but it's a new wave of people, I think, a new wave of physicians and a healthcare model of, as you said, coaching that is going to relieve the pressure, relieve the burden on the physician, and maybe introducing that idea to physicians who have not heard about it. And that's going to be something that they might, appreciate and relish to hear that, oh, you mean I can contact a healthcare advocate and that will support my patients. They don't even have to be a local person. It can be over the internet, and that can relieve a great burden from my practice.
I think that's a beautiful vision, really and truly. And that, yeah, it can be both. I think India probably is a good example of that, where you have your allopathic hospitals and your homeopathic hospitals. The homeopath I went to see originally with my son's chronic problem, she was actually carried on a pallet from the Western hospital over to the homeopaths. And that's when she decided to change midstream. She was in taking her medical training, and then that's when she became a homeopathic medical doctor. So I think there's room for so much. All we just, if we can be creative, if we can move out of this whole battle, war, fight, good, bad, right, wrong, this judgment, if we can move past that, we can be extremely creative about keeping people really healthy. And if I think about, man, I really understand what my purpose and passion is here on Earth after, almost 60 years. If we did that as a whole nation, as a whole global community, we really can create. We will have energy to create in ways. And this is for me, this is the other part of our conversation today. There are children being born into this world already wired for this kind of thinking. They are already thinking globally. They are already wired for something quite different. And so their neurological systems are, if we could listen and pay attention to how they're coming in wired, we can understand the global network that we have. It's almost, and Barbara Marx Hubbard again, I thank her for this, we are developing a whole neural network in the ether. And this is Pierre Desjardins' work as well in the 50s.
You beautifully tied that all together, all of your people that your heroes, the people who are speaking the words that we need to hear, that makes sense, that can move the planet forward to a better place through that difficult birthing process, where all of the bad stuff is, being thrown all around. Margot on the chat says, how well we can listen to the doctor depends on how well we can listen to ourselves, having a sense of inner authority. We only have a little bit of time left on today's show, so I want to give you an opportunity to say a few words about either whatever you like, your program, who you are, what you do, how you help parents, and your mission. And then I will say some concluding words.
Okay, then I will, because I do have a mission. And it is actually to globally create communities of lay people who are able to work with infectious illness in epidemics and pandemics. They are going to come. It's not an if, it's when. And so one of the biggest metaphors is influenza. This is one of the big ones that the Center for Disease Control, the World Health Organization, and the medical system cannot keep up with. So the movie Contagion probably illustrates it best, although they get the complementary medicine gets a bit of a bad rap, but it will give you a sense of what will happen. But for me, if I have pods in Calgary, and this is why social network and Facebook media is so wonderful. You have a group of women, it's mostly women, I have to say, there are some men, who know what they will be able to do and use with homeopathy. And that's my area of expertise. But a lot of these women and people on these social media also have access to other information. So nutrition, vitamins, herbals, essential oils, all very different. That's not my area of expertise. It's all great. They can share that. But for me, it's about having homeopathic remedies in every part of the world so that you can deal with this. And so take courses, continue learning, and that's why I offer the courses that I do. But that's my mission.
And tell us, and your website is?
powersofhomeopathy.com.
Okay, so if you go to Powers of Homeopathy and you see the play on words there, I love the way she's done it with her name, powersofhomeopathy.com, and you can check out all of her courses and her blogs, which are very inspiring. I got a lot of the words for today's announcements from that, and who inspires her, because that is something, it's a chain reaction of people who send out messages of love, and we receive that. And then we have inner light, passion, you said at the beginning, lighting your own fire and flame within your heart to go out and do good works on the planet. I'm going to light your fire a little bit about the Sunshine Lights. And I think that on the Nissan Communications website, and I thank Amnon for always being the show producer, there is a little something that says Sunshine Sciences somewhere, or on Homeopathy World Community Sunshine Sciences, and there's a 10% discount on full spectrum lights, and that's really great in the wintertime when people are dealing with seasonal affective disorder. I've been using these lights for over a decade. Also on Thursday, we will have a show with Alan Phillips on Blog Talk Radio, talking about vaccinations and your rights, and whatever news is up there. There's constantly something in the legal arena and also the healthcare forum. We also have the computer program, Complete Dynamics, and go to Homeopathy World Community to check out that program. I use it to studying Materia Medica and to do an analysis in case you like it too, huh?
I have it on my iPad.
You have it on your iPad. It's an awesome program, and that is also available through Homeopathy World Community, and lots of books. Also, the greatest thing that's been going around the last month is the Gluten Summit. I participated by being a listener throughout that entire week. This is Cyber Monday. They're going to continue that sale. I think it's $67 for the entire package of 29 experts. Gluten, in another 2 thumbs up she's giving me, because that is just tremendous self-empowering information to hear from all of these experts, ranging from the history of grain, and how it's changed with the GMOs, what are the pesticides, the insecticides, what is happening within our gut, how to integrate some probiotics, all the different things about nutrition and becoming well. Really, preventative medicine is what the Gluten Summit is all about. It is available via Homeopathy World Community. Just click the Gluten Summit link. So, this has been our fantastic show today. I thank you so much. I hope you have been at ease during the programming.
I have. Thank you so much for having me on here, Debbie, and for being so welcoming and opening your heart and time and space for me to be here. Thank you.
Great. And we're going to have a lineup. The rest of this year is going to be sparse, but come January, this show, Health In, is going to have really powerful speakers every single Monday. Check out Homeopathy World Community on Facebook or on homeopathyworldcommunity.com. Yay! I keep getting these thumbs up. You know how good it feels to get response and feedback? It's awesome. And I want to thank Margot, Denny, Giza, Amanda, Barb, Kim, Marge, Max, Cece, Maji, Dr. Avis, Dr. Kubushan, Dr. Deepak Sharma of the New Delhi Clinics, Orbit's Clinics, Casey, Jerry, Ovis, Chris. Oh my gosh, we have so many people on the chat today. Homeopath, Kathy, Dr. Bob, Feather, Kavitha, Kukunor. Oh my goodness, we really had a great team here. And if each one of you tells somebody else about this show, all the archives are here. If each one of you says, come back, we're going to talk. And if you have ideas for speakers, Yvonne, just gave me another name for a new speaker about thyroid. You know, we have our community here to help and support each other. Amnon, I know that our time has run out today. Big hugs and kisses to you. Lots of waves of awareness, lots of love, and we're going to have a beautiful world. Bye-bye.
Bye, Debbie.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Sundays, 9 a.m. till noon. Carrie's Psychic Cafe with Carrie Silkowski, Sundays, 8 till 9 p.m. Health In with Debbie Bruck, Mondays, 11 a.m. till noon. Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Mondays, 1 till 2 p.m. Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, the second and fourth Wednesday of each month from 7:30 till 8:30 p.m. Reawaken Your Brilliance with Julie Seibert, Wednesdays, 9 to 10 p.m. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by thatvidblasterguy.com, carolinaapparel.com, and deltaforce.net.